Hello, everybody. Welcome to the daily check-in. It is a LinkedIn Live show that I do with amazing coaches who share our mission in helping women earn more and live better. I'm your host, Claire Wasserman, founder and author of Ladies Get Paid. We are an educational platform, a global community, and a book, as you can see, that wants women to just have more in their lives. I'm playing around with kind of a new elevator pitch, and I think I like to say, learn, earn, and live with intention. Or maybe I just like rhyming, learning and earning. With that, today I'm super jazzed to have Jenn Walker Wall on the show. Jenn's going to talk more about what she does in depth because she knows herself best. But in short, she is the founder of Work Wonders Careers, where she helps mission-driven professionals make moves that matter. Okay, so Jenn clearly likes an alliteration too. After spending the early part of her career in hiring, training, and leadership development, Jenn and her team helps professionals launch strategic job searches. That's what we're talking about today. She also helps folks communicate their value and align their work with their values. Interesting. So Jenn, first and foremost, welcome. I'd love for you to just maybe tell us a little bit more about yourself, and then we'll dive into our focus today, which is about navigating career transitions and all the agita and angst that can come with that. But thank you for being here, Jenn.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I never say no to an opportunity to chat about career transitions and job searching. And just business owner to business owner, I remain unprepared for the level of things I have to constantly name and articulate. So I do default to a lot of alliteration, for better or worse. I'm with you. Yes, there's a lot of things to name when you run a business. You don't realize it until you dive in. But my background, I accidentally fell into hiring early in my career. And I had the experience, I was working in higher education doing faculty searches. And if you don't know anything about academic faculty searches, it's a lot like becoming a rock star. There are, it was very easily many hundreds of applicants for every single role. And so I spent several early years in my career watching these very, very competitive searches sort of get whittled down from hundreds, sometimes close to 1,000 applicants, to a final offer. And I didn't realize it at that time, of course, but I learned a lot about what it took to actually, stand out in a very, very crowded, very hyper competitive field. And so while I was doing that during the day, I was getting my graduate degree in sociology at night, and I left hiring ultimately to work in a research lab at MIT, which I loved. But I realized I really missed being in the career and hiring space. So instead of going back to HR, I started Work Wonders on the side. And I've been doing this for 9 years, writing resumes, job search strategy, coaching, really helping people make practical aligned decisions to move their career forward. I'm really passionate about helping people put themselves back in the driver's seat. Sometimes it feels like work is happening to us. And so there's actually a lot we can do to sort of step into our power and, hold the reins a little bit.
I love that. So for all the coaches that come on, I think we're now in our second or third week of doing this. It's open-ended. I say, hey, listen, what's exciting you most these days? What's the topic that you feel will be most resonant? And so you said navigating career transitions. And then within that, talking about perfectionism and uncertainty, dealing with that. Then how do you get your resume to actually generate you interviews, and then managing your time and energy in that entire process. That's so much to cover. So I'll let you dive in,
Yeah.
where you feel is best to begin. I guess I would say why this topic?
Yeah. I think there's such an interesting juxtaposition that's happening with job seekers right now. Like some people are in the job search unexpectedly because of the layoffs. And some people are really moving very intentionally and strategically, in a different direction. So different people may need different things. And something that's really important and that we really stress is your career is not the kind of thing where you can look around and see what other people are doing. You really have to look within and figure out where you're at and what your needs are. That's going to change over the course of your career. I know I wasn't prepared for that. And I think a lot of our clients are not prepared for that. So I think career transitions are a great evergreen topic, but they're really unique happening. And when I think about what the job search and career world has looked like for people in the last few years, it's been like whiplash, really challenging things, really great things, back to really challenging things. So I am really excited about sort of helping people figure out what it is that they need and what their plan needs to look like, and operationalizing that. I think a place I always go because I spend so much time thinking about it are resumes. Because I worked in the hiring space and spent so much time looking at other people's resumes, I think they get a bad rap. I think a lot of people think that they are not effective in the job search, but I will say, probably 95% of our clients, whether they're making big or small career transitions, ultimately end up getting an offer because they applied for roles online, and used their resume effectively. So we are big proponents of using the resume, and think that with the right intentions and the right guidance, that it can actually be something that gets you traction.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so let's think about the person who this is unexpected.
Yeah,
And what you said earlier of you feel like your career or life is happening to you. So
yeah,
this was not part of the plan. They are now unemployed. What might be some first steps that you can give them,
yeah.
so that they can just sort of like lay a good foundation, a solid foundation for this new job search?
Yes. I mean, I think the first thing is to figure out if you need to find a job as soon as possible or not. Some
Right.
people have planned to take time off. Some people have really generous, packages, and they don't need to necessarily look right away. Some people have mortgages and families and loans and all of that, right? And feel like a sense of urgency. There is no wrong decision, but you do have to make it for yourself. So I think the degree of urgency in looking for a new job can make a really big difference. Now, I'm a big fan of never having to urgently look for a new job. So I think if you talk to a lot of the people who work with us, we encourage a passive job search approach when possible. And so I'm always trying to move people to be as passive as possible, which I think really boils down to being as choosy as possible. We prioritize security and safety. So like if you value and need to honor values around continuity of salary and like healthcare, for example, then you are welcome to focus on jobs that like get you that. But you're also welcome to be as right selective and choosy as you can be. And so if you are in a position to wait out some of the chaos in the market, I know some people are doing that. If people have been meaning to take a sabbatical and they're happy to do that, that's an okay move to make too. What I really do love to encourage though, or remind people, is that sometimes the job search takes longer than you want, especially if you are making a significant career transition. So I would encourage you, even if you are someone who's like, I'm going to take the summer, take small steps now, look at jobs that are posted, figure out what aligns, take a look at that resume, see what kind of, revisions that you can make to really stand out as a potential applicant. Let people know that you're looking. Those are really small, not time intensive, not energy intensive steps that you can do to lay the groundwork if you think you'll pick this back up in the fall.
Okay, great. I love that. And then you decide, okay, I can spend a little bit of time here. I don't need to like super rush to get my next job. What might be the next steps after that that you would recommend somebody to do to get organized and
Yeah,
operational? I love that you use that word.
yeah, yeah. So if I were going to passively look, well, very passively look for a job, I would simply look for a job very intentionally. So I actually think this can be an exercise, or it can be the next step in your job search process, is to really take a look at some potential jobs online that are available. Look at those job postings, look at the responsibilities, learn more about the potential companies, look at those qualifications, and get a clear sense for yourself what your target roles are going to involve. It doesn't always have to be the same job title. Like, clarity to me is not about I've consolidated my interests into like an organizational job title, but rather about like what are the responsibilities, qualifications, and skills that you'll be leveraging. Those could be different. We do have clients who have some breadth to their search. And then I would want to let people know what I was looking for. So I might take a look at my network and pick 5 to 10 people who I've worked with previously, who I trust, and send along, a copy of my resume with a couple sample target jobs. and ask for them to keep their eyes open for these kinds of opportunities, or if they could make introductions to people who have similar roles or work at these organizations. We have great luck with people applying cold online, but I am a relationship person through and through. So if you have those relationships, I think there's no reason to not leverage them. And then
Mm-hmm.
I would really take a good solid look at your resume and LinkedIn. And I want you to imagine that, the recruiter for this role has lots of people to sift through. How obvious is it that you're really well qualified? Where are your qualifications? Are they buried on the second page of your resume? Are they right up front where people can see them? Have you demonstrated the results and outcomes that you've produced? Most people we work with have a lot of room for improvement in their resume. And so you can move through that at your pace, quickly, slowly. But I would move towards bringing those things into alignment very strategically.
What are some common mistakes or misconceptions do you feel like people tend to have, when they come to work with you when it comes to their, whether it's the resume, the LinkedIn, or just the job search in general?
Great question. So there are definitely some mistakes I make, and the most obvious one actually is about readability. Your resume needs to be easy to read, and I don't mean like the world's cutest
Uh-huh.
template in Canva, right? Like, I mean, it needs to be super easy to read, top to bottom, left to right, and it needs to demonstrate your qualifications. So a common mistake I make, people think it can only be one page, or no, it's supposed to be as short as possible. And the font is like size 8. There's no margins, like they've got some crazy design to try and fit everything in. So actually white space, an easy to read font, like not having a gazillion text tables or design elements, like just keeping everything in one column and easy to read is really underrated advice. And it's a very easy, quick fix. And then I would take a look at the experience section. I would really focus on making sure that the bullet points in the experience section don't just describe the work you do, but rather convey the output, the result, the accomplishment. Even if you don't have metrics, you can still let us know what you improved, what you increased, what you decreased, right? And really thinking about yourself like that. Also, I think that process helps people when it gets to the phone screen and it gets to the interview. Having done this preparation and writing makes it so much easier to really talk about yourself later on in the process. So those are two relatively easy fixes, I would say. And also we use a summary of qualifications at the top of people's resumes. Most of the time people are tailoring that for the job at hand and using those bullet points to summarize their qualifications for the job. So that is also something I really love and think is really, really worthwhile.
Do you recommend people have kind of a standard template and then customize it based on where they're applying? I've also seen that would be my initial instinct, but I've been recently seeing some folks talking on LinkedIn about how people are spending too much time trying to customize per job, and done is better than perfect. And I know perfectionism is a theme that you wanted to bring up for today's conversation.
Yeah. So we have a saying in our community of clients, which is the best kind of resume is a submitted resume. um, and I think there's like all these tips and hacks, and I can be someone who also likes to perseverate and like wants everything to be, optimal. But at the end of the day, the resume needs to be submitted. So we always work from that assumption. If it's like, if you want to get in under the wire of a deadline and you don't have time to tailor, just submit your resume. Like, worse things have happened, right? And stranger things have happened. But should you tailor or should you not tailor, I think really depends on your job search goals and your resume as it is. Really, the only place we have people do any tailoring is in that top summary. So it really, once we have done all the work of like revising strategically the resume, we work on helping people learn how to tailor those bullet points at the top very quickly and efficiently. And usually they create kind of a library of bullet points that they move in and out. And there are instances, if you are someone who is looking at two very different jobs, it might be helpful for you to have two different templates. But I think most people that we work with, like probably 70 or 80%, use a single resume template that they tailor the summary for as they're applying for each role.
Okay. I want to talk about transferable skills. So in going off of the theme of we're talking about job
Yeah.
transition, let's like think about a transition that's like pretty big. Words of wisdom that you can give for folks who are going to take the leap into something pretty new. How do you make the case
Absolutely.
for
Yeah.
the chance on you?
So I think the first thing I would want clients to do is really to look at the qualifications of their target jobs and make sure they are not making up qualifications that are not there. A lot of times we add things to the list that we think should be there or might be there, but sometimes that's just not the case. And a lot of folks I see that make significant career transitions do so on relationship skills, communication skills, the kind of skills simply needed in many roles these days. So I would just defer to the qualifications and always make sure that we're not making a harder job for ourselves than actually exists. But then I think in terms of strategy, you want to take what I think is the 10,000 foot view. You don't want to be lost in the weeds of your work day to day, which is so easy. And it's so easy to do. It's almost impossible not to, right? And you really want to think like, what are the results? You know, I was doing a resume webinar today, and it was for healthcare professionals. And someone was like, what if I don't want to be in healthcare anymore? So instead of referencing your ability to comply or manage HIPAA, you can talk about managing compliance, right? Like HIPAA is about your ability to sort of like make sure and maintain people's confidentiality and make sure others on your team are doing the same, is about managing compliance.
Right.
Compliance translates. And so it's really about not getting lost in the vernacular of the day to day, which we're just, it's the air we breathe, right? But getting above that, like what would it look like if you went to work in insurance? Like what are the things you have to check for there? So I think that that's super, super helpful. And one of my favorite things to do is really just remove unnecessary and potentially unhelpful industry specific references. So sometimes you can really make people look very industry agnostic if that's helpful to their transition.
Okay. And I'm going to add my own little piece of advice or guidance alongside that. Make sure that you are talking to people who have the job that you want or have a similar job. Get a really good sense from them about what their biggest challenges are and the skills, the hard and the soft skills required to
Yeah.
achieve those challenges. Because what your potential employer is going to be looking at is learning curve, right? How quickly is this person going to
Yeah.
be able to get up to speed? Now, you coming from the way outside perspective, seems like the learning curve might be quite large. So I want everything that you say to speak to that concern, which
Yeah.
would be getting specific about, listen, I interviewed 5 people who have this job or similar job. And I feel, here were some things we discussed in regards to not what's necessarily so great about the job, but what's actually tricky about the
Yeah.
job. Because
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure that I'm not wasting your time, in applying. And I
Yes.
think we're going to just be so impressed that you did your homework. Again, not just on like, it all sounds good, but like, what's the friggin' reality of actually having this job?
Yes. And that pairs really well with eliminating unnecessary industry references, right? A lot of times in cover letters, I'll see something like, previously I worked at X hospital. And it's like, we're not doing healthcare. So we actually don't need to like hit them over the head with these reminders that we come from another place. They'll see it. We're not lying, but like, let's use other language and convey what they're actually asking for and need, instead of kind of reminding everyone that we come from a different industry.
That's so good. That's so good. It's interesting. Yeah, when you sent me what you wanted to talk about today, I'm curious why you included the word perfectionism. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, you wanted to talk about navigating perfectionism and uncertainty in your job search. Uncertainty, I get. Perfectionism was interesting. Talk to me about the inclusion of those 2 words, and then, of course, how do you actually navigate them during the.
Yeah. So one thing I noticed that really surprised me when I started working with clients. So people are kind of like there's a spectrum here. People are either applying to all of the jobs, right? Or they're applying to none of the jobs. And I was really shocked how many people hired me without applying to any jobs. Like they can't, and, I imagined I would be like a last resort situation, but people have a hard time starting. And I think that that's really where the uncertainty and the perfectionism, they blend together to just create a lot of obstacles and challenges. So one thing I see that's very common is people emailing themselves jobs or looking at jobs, but like never actually applying. And a lot of people will say they're avoiding rejection. They aren't really sure that they want the job, and can't really bring themselves to actually apply. They worry that their resume is simply not good enough or cut out to do the job. And so there's a lot of different ways to sort of think about this, but just like very broadly speaking, I try to set a really clear bar for a job posting. Like the job we don't look at a job posting that we might apply to and decide, will I take this job? The question is, are you intrigued, excited, or enthusiastic, curious about the role? Do you want to learn more about the role? If the answer is yes, then it goes in the yes pile, right? It makes itself something that's worth actually applying. And then the other question around perfectionism is like, what opportunities do we have to make some improvements? And something that I find helps a lot is we have this exercise that we sometimes do with clients in our community of like, let's apply for a low stakes job. Don't wait till it's a 10 out of 10 job. I'd rather people not wait till it's a 10 out of 10 job to do this work. I'd rather we practice. I'd rather, we start early, right? So sometimes people will find a job that's like a 5 or 6 out of a 10 and just be like, there's nothing special about this role, but like, it's here, I'm qualified. Like, let's go through the process of revising the resume and coming up with those outcomes and tailoring the summary and let you practice your skills as an applicant, right? And then hit submit. So I really like to find opportunities to lower the stakes, to make it easy. And there's lots of ways to do that throughout the process, but that's probably one of my favorites.
I love that. I love the lowering the stakes. And everybody, please use this. Think about this in other ways of your life, like negotiating your salary. That's high stakes. You can negotiate so many other things, right? It's just a process of saying what you want and then figuring out a solution with the other side, or even just interviewing. I look at it as a practice, not just for this job, but for way in the future, or speaking gigs or interviews, things are doing here. Like, you're doing this so you could be on Oprah. You know what I mean? Like, this is just practice. This is low stakes,
Yes, exactly. Low stakes Oprah.
Yes, low budget Oprah. No, I'm just kidding. I would be so honored if I was. Question about time and managing time and energy, because I think without that, none of this matters.
100%, right? Like I always say, it's actually really easy to like quote unquote fix a resume. It's hard to use it consistently in the way that you need to in order to actually get traction. So we have a couple of things that I suggest. There's like a happy middle between like volume of applications versus, actually tailoring those applications. So what we say to our clients, once we have a resume that we're ready to use and we've done that, initial revision, we want them to look for 4 to 8 targeted, aligned roles, not random roles, not any roles, but roles that they actually want to like learn more about, to tailor their application, their resume for that role. So we encourage 4 to 8 applications a month for 2 months. Almost, I would say probably 90 to 95% of our clients get interviews in that time frame. And in my mind, that allows us a couple of things. It's not that intense, first of all, in terms of a pace. So if you're working full time or you have a family, like it's something that you can manage. And it gives us enough of a runway and a volume to really assess what's going on, right? Like to really figure out, because there's so much that happens in the hiring process that has nothing to do with you. There's a hiring freeze, there's layoffs, the hiring manager's on vacation. Like there's a million things that could slow down the hiring process that don't mean anything about your resume. But I do find that after 2 months, in most cases, it's worth sitting down and really looking at what's happening. And by focusing on the tailoring and the quality of the applications and the alignment of the opportunities, we don't have a process that takes hours and hours. It can really be a little bit of time here and there. I always say, if you can give me 30 minutes, like 2 or 3 times a week, we can have a job search for you. So it's really about figuring out. Some of our clients, they're weekend warrior types and they'll just like try to hash it out when they've got a free afternoon. And some people need those small pockets of time. And a lot of times, like, and I know for me, this is true, like those small pockets of time are so fundamentally unsatisfying. Like you really just want to feel like you did an epic job and move on. So it's about learning to like accept, like, I can make peace with this. I can build from here. And actually, if I use my time clearly and effectively, this will be really worthwhile. And because people actually get interviews from the jobs they're applying for, it ends up being a very efficient process.
I'd love any success stories. Love a good success story. Come inspire us. So whether, in your own career or your clients, where somebody came to you and they were in the midst of this process, how you got them to the next level. I would love you to share any of those.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been doing this for a while, so there's a lot of success stories. But a favorite one is I heard from someone reached out early this year, had been applying for a huge amount of jobs for months, and when I looked at her resume, I was shocked at sort of like how little experience was there. It was beautiful and graphic, but it wasn't conveying much in terms of her qualifications. And we worked together. I redid her resume. I sent her draft for review, and she started using it. And by the time she got back to me, she had 3 interviews. So I love stories like that. I don't want to set that up necessarily as the norm, but it is like a really stark reminder of like doing the basics well can
Mhm.
totally transform the results that you're getting. And I also just get really happy when people apply for a job and they haven't in like a year or 5 years or 10 years. Like that's actually monumental. People have been in the same role or they've been out of the workforce. So I try not to just think of wins as like getting the interview or getting the job. There are a million wins along the way. So getting that job search started, learning how to talk about yourself, that can be so hard for so many people to really feel comfortable conveying their qualifications. And so those are the wins I look for along the way. But we do not mind immediate gratification either. We welcome that.
I love that. So a question that I am asking all coaches that come on is to just share what you believe are the fundamentals when it comes to becoming your own biggest champion in work, money, and life.
Yeah, I think this is like not an easy question to answer. It's a fabulous question, a great thought exercise. I think where I come to answer this is really that it's important to me personally and also in my work with clients to find ways to help people exercise agency and self-leadership
Yeah.
and to not just sit back and let other people your career fall into the hands of other people. Your career is money, your career is health in some ways, right? Your career is sort of stability in your life. And so I think it's really important to step up to the plate and find ways to take ownership over that and to drive the results and not be too passive about it.
I love that. Self-leadership, that's a new phrase that I've heard that I really enjoy. How would you define that? Or how does it feel to be self-led?
I How does it feel to be self-led? Well, I know because when I'm acting out of enthusiasm and curiosity and in integrity with my own values, that's how I know I'm acting from self-leadership. It's
Mhm.
like a very regulated state versus like when I'm like had a bad day and things are spiraling. Like I'm allowed to have those days and moments, but I don't make any strategic decisions on those days
Yes.
and in those moments. They happen, they're part of the process. But I feel like being self-led is about being reflective and intentional, and aware of how you're moving forward and what your role is to play and also what your role isn't to play sometimes.
Ooh, so good.
Yeah.
How can people find you, follow you, and most importantly, pay you?
Yes, I am obviously here on LinkedIn, so you can connect with me here. And I'd love to have you visit us, workwonderscareers.com. You can book strategy sessions or request an assessment to work with us longer term. So if you were interested, that's where you can find me.
Awesome. And then we've got 2 more minutes left. So if there's any other words of wisdom you'd like to share, anything you haven't covered, or even speaking to what's going on in the economy right now, or how the pandemic has changed the job search, I cede the floor to you for the last few.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's really important to recognize the ways in which things have and have not changed.
Mhm.
To me, this really feels like pace wise, timeline wise, like it did before the pandemic. Like job searches should take some time, especially if you're mid career and beyond. You want to be really conscientious of what you're doing. And to people who might be putting it off or feeling like they're entering in from a very passive place, I'd love to encourage you to learn and treat this as an experiential process for you. I always like to say, like, let's create the job search process that we want our job to feel like. Like, if you want to be strategic and you want to take the reins, do that in your job search. If you want to be supported, do that for your job search. If you want to work in community, do that for your job search and your career. So I think the best way to have a successful outcome is to have a successful process. And sometimes we need to ask ourselves, what is it that we need to move forward successfully?
Love that. So a successful outcome it is to have a successful process. And the other thing that I really love that you said today was about celebrating all of the progress along the way, that it's not just about getting the job at the end of it, but what are the things that you were able to not only achieve, but like come to understand about yourself and what you want and what you value in
Yes,
that. So I love that.
absolutely.
Thank you. And
Good.
thank you so
Thank you.
much for being here. Thank you for the work that you do, for all that watched or will watch, since I know this recording will stay up on all of our channels. Best of luck now. Go get paid.
Yes. Thank you.